Thanks for tuning in to another edition of On the Road to Victory. Sorry, I got a little skippy there for me. Didn't know what was happening. I was trying to enjoy the music. But today, we have a very special guest, Mr. Chris Franklin of NJ.com, Eagles and 76ers beat reporter. Chris, thank you so much for joining me today. I really can't wait to hear your thoughts on this draft.
Hey Jimmy, how you doing? Thank you so much for having me on. Look forward to it. You got a great podcast going on, and when you invited me to be on here, I definitely had to be on here, man. So thank you very much.
Of course, everybody that follows me knows that, dude, I only bring on people that I respect their work and are out there doing that work. And every time I'm listening to those pressers, half the time it's like, oh, geez, what question's coming next? Then I hear your voice and it's like an angel serenading me. I'm like, we're going to get some football talk. Thanks.
Remind me to go and send that Venmo. Wait, what's the Venmo?
Yeah.
That's
No, but for real, not trying to sit here and, just talk you up. But no, I really do appreciate your work, Chris. You do great things over at NJ.com, and I urge everyone to go check him out. I have him tagged in Twitter, so you definitely go check out his work. I think, you do some great stuff. And honestly, I didn't honestly know too much about you before you started working for NJ.com. And that's my bad, dude, because looks like you're an award winner and you're out there doing big things, Chris. So just for a brief second before we get into football, why don't you tell these people a little bit about yourself, where they can find you? I like to give this moment to people just because you're doing hard work out there, and I think other people need to recognize that.
Well, thanks. Appreciate it. It's definitely NJ.com/Eagles and NJ.com/Sixers. As Jimmy mentioned, I go ahead and I cover the Eagles and the Sixers. I mean, we recently just did the draft. Me and my counterpart, Mike K, we put out a lot of stuff over there, a lot of analysis. We had Eagles Extra, where you can go ahead and text us as well, too, your questions, if you want to see some analysis that way. And then upcoming right now, you got a Sixers playoff run that's about to happen. So we got a lot of places going on. And you check me out on Twitter at C Franklin News and Instagram at C Franklin News.
Great stuff, Chris. And definitely be tuning in for that 76ers coverage. Getting excited. This is just my favorite time of the year. The draft coverage you guys put out there was fantastic. I appreciate following all that stuff you do. It keeps me up to date. And I try to do my best. It's a whirlwind out there come draft time. And, a lot of months of work put into it. And, those guys are doing a lot of work. The Eagles front office, they're really, the scouts are out there. Now, this draft, a lot of people are definitely differing in opinions when it comes down to it. I myself went into this draft thinking this is probably a couple to a few year plan, right? This isn't one player away. We're back on track. We've got to get younger. We got to do a lot of things here. So I felt pretty positive. But I wanted to bring you on today. You're an actual Eagles beat reporter. You got the lowdown. I want to get your thoughts on it, some of the things you're hearing. So let's just start it off. We could talk about, in general, leading up to the draft and that first round. We talk about the Eagles trading back from 6 to 12. Probably, thinking in their head, Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase, probably not available. Lo and behold, they weren't. At 12, we jump in front of the Giants because we know that they're going to take Devontae with the Cowboys. I mean, what? Trade with the Cowboys, take Devontae Smith. What are your thoughts on that whole move around, acquiring that first round pick? What are your thoughts? How do you like Devontae Smith?
I love the pick itself. I think that Devontae Smith can go ahead and provide a lot of things for that Eagles offense. When you look at what Sirianni did with the Colts, they ran a lot of 3-by-1, meaning that you had the tight end on one side, but you had the three other receivers on that opposite side. And what you see Smith can do, it can go definitely change that dynamic the Eagles wide receivers have. It just opens up so much space now for Rager. It opens up space for Goddard as well, too. I think he probably benefits the most now because he can control the middle of that field. When I initially heard that they were trading back from 6 to 12, my eyes opened up very wide. It's like I was shocked. It's like, hey, you have a chance to really truly get an impact player, and they were still able to go ahead and do that at 12. So there's a lot of benefits that came from there. Even if you had to trade with your division rival, the Cowboys, you trade that third round pick, it was still a good decision to go ahead, and they still have several picks next year that they can use for a multitude of these needs that they have. So overall, it was a good decision.
I think so myself. You mentioned it. It's going to help Rager. It's going to help Fulgham, Goddard, Ward, everybody that's competing for a job. They're going to have to get better. The wide receiver room, it's been a question mark. We took a wide receiver in the first round last year. I have a lot of hopes for that young man. I just think, not used correctly, and having a true number one receiver, and you can call him an X, which we will, but he will move around. We all know that. He's going to be put in the slot, Z, whatever. He's going to be a weapon, and I am very excited just talking about him. But you said we fleeced our, division opponent, moved in front, so all of it just really made me feel good. And I think what people are forgetting about, not just with this pick, but as the draft as a whole, when you're looking to, people are grading it or feeling a certain way. Think about the fact that, we talked about this for a month leading up to it after we traded to 12. Why would you trade back up to the top 10? I'll tell you why you'd trade back in the top 10 if you're not giving up as much as you got in the first place. So you got that first round pick. You moved up 33 spots from the fifth round to the fourth round. Then you ended up moving up 2 spots. You got Devontae Smith, who would have been a pleasure to have at 6, got him at 10. You acquired a first round pick. And sure, you gave up that third, but I'm ecstatic about it. I liked who we picked with that Dolphins pick. So we'll get into him in a second. But yeah, I'm with you, Chris. Loved it. And I think we're setting up for the future here. So then we go on to day 2. And, everybody's looking at JOK. I think every fan base is sitting there. Why is this guy falling? I mean, what an elite talent. You find out he's got heart issues. Sure, that definitely hindered. I mean, that's why. But we went ahead and took what could be Jason Kelsey's replacement, Landon Dickerson. Now, there's a big what if, but I think that's, for me, that's every position, every player in the NFL. They're all one injury away. So I get it. He has a past of it, but I like the pick overall, and I think he's a top 20 talent if he didn't have that injury history. So what are your thoughts on the Landon Dickerson pick at 2?
It's a very high risk, high reward situation selecting Dickerson. I mean, he had 2 different ACL injuries. He had the surgery on his ankles. When he's going, he definitely can become that road grader. I mean, Howie Roseman mentioned earlier today that they see a lot of John Runyon in him, and you need that nastiness along the offensive line. Is he going to be a guy that can run out on those screen passes as well as Kelsey? He can develop it. Not right now. Kelsey's still, in my opinion, a generational guy that's able to go out there and block on screens. But he can. You need character guys and you need tough guys on that offensive line to give it an identity. So if he's able, and it's a big, if he's able to stay healthy, they got good value at that pick. You hate to say value when you talk about second round. You're like, hey, you think more value around the later rounds. But if he does stay healthy, you got a guy who not only gives you an identity, he can play guard. He's versatile. He can play center. He can play guard. He's mentioned he played all 5 positions. I don't see him a tackle in this offense, but if he plays within those interior boxes, he can compete with Malo, compete with Brandon Brooks, who decided to go in a different direction there. He just adds a lot to there. So it'll be interesting to see how he recovers from this. B, if he's able to get that flexibility, and C, Jeff Stoutland is huge on angles, and we know Stoutland has that connection with Alabama with his time spending as a coach there. And he still talks Nick Saban. He almost went there again. I mean, he was offered a job in this offseason. So when you look at Dickerson, he can add a lot. And it's going to be interesting to see if he's able to go ahead and get those angles down and get into that inside that box and do it. Because if so, you got your Brooks replacement or your Kelsey replacement.
Yep. And, you hit the nail on the head. You talk about him playing all 5 positions, and yeah, we don't see him playing tackle, but what a great asset that is to have for a guy to be versatile and to also understand what's going on at every position, especially if you're expected to be the center of this team one day. So, but I love his toughness. I love his attitude. Loved hearing the call, talking about rock, paper, scissors with Nick Sirianni, like hilarious. I love, he's got that Kelsey edge, and sure, he's a long way away. I mean, nobody's Jason Kelsey, and that's what we love about him. But you're right. He's got to work on a lot of stuff, but a value pick. And we hate saying that. You want a day one starter, oh, come on, this team's got so many holes. How can you not? But that's the thing. We got so many holes. You got to look at this thing as a whole, right?
So true. So true. And when you also look at the contract situations for a lot of these guys, I mean, they kick the can down the road a little bit, but they're also getting older. So you need a youth movement. You still have Jack Driscoll you can use. You still have Nate Herbig you can still use to fill in spots. Matt Pryor, yeah, especially with the Dickerson going, you may sort of look a different way, but you need to add youth to those positions. And yet, Mailata, you can't forget Mailata,
Yeah,
and
whoever loses that battle. Yeah.
you can't miss them. You certainly
Yeah.
can't miss
Yeah, about it.
them. But Dillard is and sorry, sidetrack all this. It's gonna be interesting to see what they do with Dillard too, because you don't know what you're going to do. So it's they need youth along that offensive line.
Definitely. And I agree. You just mentioned all those names right there. I loved Jack Driscoll last year, Nate Herbig, both of them getting thrown into the fire against Washington week 1, and they did well. I mean, we got eaten alive, but let's not kid ourselves. That was the Washington front. And I like those guys' depth. And then you talk about Dillard and Mailata battling it out, and if Dillard loses, what happens with him? So it's very, very intriguing to see. I think Mailata's earned his right. That Ravens game and Steelers, like watching him against those kind of guys, I was like, whoa, why are we even letting JP play when he comes back? So that's over, right? It's a new system. And you talked about Dickerson. I think we're going to run the ball a lot more in these next few years
Wait,
with
you said
Sirianni.
what? You said an R word. What was that?
Yeah, I know. I've talked about getting that tattooed on my forehead, Chris. I'm not kidding. The last 3 years, I've wanted to jump out of that window because I don't know how many times we had to say, Doug, run the ball. And we started making the joke. Oh, is this Andy Reid? He got worse than Andy Reid ever was, right? I mean,
You
it
add
was,
so much balance when you add that unpredictability. You run the ball. You establish the time of possession. You wear down the defensive line. So when you decide to go ahead and throw the ball, what do you know? You got time because you wore them down. So it. I like what potentially Sirianni could do if you looking at what the Colts did, and if he's bringing a similar system here, the aspect of the running the ball a lot more, it should definitely help this team, especially the defense, because knowing all the holes over there, it's going to help.
we'll definitely get into those holes in a second here. But you're right. And we'll also get into another running back added into this room, which gets me excited, which is going to help you open up and, what this last system wasn't able to do with the play action and all of your RPOs and everything. Because when you're one dimensional, well, teams kind of know what you're doing. And you have Miles Sanders. I regress. But we'll get on to the next pick. Now we started. I actually mentioned before the draft, I needed at least 6 out of 11 of those picks to be defense. Ended up with 9 at the end. Still got 6 defensive players. So went high on the defensive side. Notice the first 2 picks, everybody's like, oh, we're focusing on the offense. All right. Defense. It just comes at us. So now you got a guy another one where everybody's looking at Aaron Robinson. Why did you just trade with the Panthers? We moved back from 70 to 73. Pick up a 6th-round pick. Nobody cares about it. We already have 3. Now we've got 4. So we go ahead and make a pick, and now everybody's even more pissed. You got yourself Milton Williams. I think this kid, he's, obviously been compared to Aaron Donald. That's a little ridiculous. Don't put that kind of evil on him. But, having that pressure, that's a little too much for him. But he is off the charts with athleticism. You talk about, 99 percentile in the 40-yard dash, 3-cone drill. This kid has got the talent. It's just they talk about, is he inside? Is he outside? So that was the confusion as to why a guy of his talent would drop to the 3rd round. Because I think a lot of people just didn't know him, and a lot of Eagles fans weren't focusing on defensive tackles because we kind of thought we were good there. How are you feeling about the Milton Williams pick?
It was a pick that had to be made, given that Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave can both become free agents on 2022. You needed to go ahead and backfill there, and you had Hassan Ridgeway, who performed pretty well last year when he was called upon, but you needed more depth because you were entering the season, another season with Raekwon Williams, who didn't get that many snaps on the field. I like what, and this is something you saw throughout this whole entire draft. They wanted versatility, and you looked at what Williams can provide. You can play that end, but he can also shift down into the middle. And you look at what he could potentially bring to this defense. You could use that, especially. I mean, you look at the way Vinny Curry was used. You got a guy coming who's able to go ahead and rush on the outside. They said Malik Jackson when they went throw a comp to
Yes.
him, which is not bad as well too. You got a guy who's quick on the interior. You worry about if they decide to run him. You worry about a little bit, but can always bulk up and learn different techniques to do that. But his strength. I mean, if you can bench press 500 pounds, I mean, God bless you. You've got something there. So you have him on the interior. You get that good push from there. If he develops two, maybe three more different pass rush moves, I think that's going to be a good pick when you look at the long run, given that what this team has looking toward the future. And they'll still need to get, even though they took one later, they still need to probably get one more next year, like one more top tier guy. But it's a good base and good start for this defensive line for the future.
For sure. And I think you brought up a great point. And I love what you said. They had compared him to Malik Jackson, but I like who you brought up because this is exactly who I brought up, Vinny Curry. So
Yeah.
let's try to think him in that role with him going. I think he went to the Jets. You're going to have somebody that can actually stop the run. He's pretty good against it. So we talk about him being able to play inside, outside. Not exactly bulkiest where you need him to be inside and outside. Like you said, he needs to add more pass rush moves. He definitely needs some work, but I think we're going to be just fine. He's somebody that is going to be groomed by some pretty good talent in Fletcher and Brandon. And you talk about guys like that have both played inside and outside in their career as well. So I think it's going to be very beneficial for him. And I love the point you made. I think it was a pick that needed to be made as well. You mentioned earlier in the video youth movement. I love that. And another thing, you talk about leadership. 6 out of 9 of these guys were team captains. Like you notice that we're changing the culture here, and it needed to happen. Clearly, things were not going well, Chris. So I'm happy so far. Day 2. How are you feeling after day 2?
Day two, it was a I pretty if I had to put the draft and everything, I put it as a sandwich. Day two probably had your biggest question marks, but and it's a big but if they're able to pan out, that it all works out in the end. So it's a lot of optimism, a lot of high risk, high reward picks when it came to the day two thing.
Definitely. And, I felt like it was deja vu last year. Not only that we took a wide receiver in the first round, but everybody's, living up, hey. Well, not everybody was happy about Rager. I was. I was very excited. Day 2, they throw us the biggest curveball and go to Alabama, but obviously Oklahoma in the end with Jalen Hurts. But they take Jalen Hurts. You know what I mean? And it was like, what the? So Dickerson, another comment was just mentioned. JOK, we talked about him earlier in the video. That heart issue got us. But by the end of day 2, I was breathing it in. I was like, hey, these are the right moves for the future. And what do we know about Howie? And he even said it afterwards. He always focusing on those trenches. And I can't be mad about that. That's how you win Super Bowl. So, hey, go ahead. So now on to day 3. Everybody, got to get a corner. We didn't get a corner yesterday. You have to have an outside corner. We don't have an outside corner. What do they do? Inside corner. And the kids played outside. But let's be real. Don't really see him too much. Well, on this team, he could actually be the starting outside corner because, well, we didn't address that yet. I'd love to see Steven Nelson, maybe some veterans out there, but we went ahead. Let's talk about this young man. You could be upset about whatever the pick is, but let's be excited for this young man. He's a Philadelphia Eagle now, and he's a playmaker. Comes from a family that just, dude, what was it? Like 5 brothers that played in MLB. His dad was on the Patriots or something. Like, what the? I
Mom
love
played
it, man.
football
So,
too.
how do you feel about Zach McPherson? I know he's not an outside guy, but it's an upgrade from Avonte Maddox. He is a playmaker. He's got that straight line speed. I think he needs to work on some footwork, but I think Jonathan Gannon could do some work with him. How did you feel about that pick?
I think you needed somebody to replace Nickel Roby Coleman, especially even though he's a free agent. You saw what he happened last year, and you had a lot of hopes for Nickel Roby Coleman, and didn't pan out the way the Eagles would have hoped it did. But when you look at the way McPherson plays, he's physical, a little stiff when it comes to going against those speedy receivers. But when Jonathan Gannon, who's going to employ a lot of zone, he fits perfectly in this. You have a guy who's not afraid to go ahead and take some chances at times. You got when you have those bigger receivers that line up in the slot, or say if you have a starting wide receiver that goes to side, someone's go, hey, you know what, let's move him inside. I think he could hold his own on there. And especially with Gannon, if he goes back to his time with Minnesota, if he's aggressive and he does those double A gap blitzes or he brings pressure from other ways, you just need a guy to go ahead and cover 3-4 seconds itself and just cover a guy that way and cover a small area. So he's a short tackler right after a catch as well too. You don't have to worry about too many missed tackles. So I think overall, given where he was taken in the 4th round, it wasn't a bad pick.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that Daniel Jeremiah had him like 85th. So once I saw that, I was like, all right, I trust him. But you mentioned it again. Versatility. That is the name of the game here. And it usually is, ladies and gentlemen. And this kid's versatile. You talk about, mostly pretty good at zone. And that's probably what we're going to, some cover 2 here. But I think, the fact that he can play man, zone, inside, outside, obviously we need that. It was a great pick, a value pick again. But I liked it, and you mentioned it. He's got some he has straight line speed, but he needs to work on that footwork, staying with some of these receivers. But the matchups, I talked about how perfect it will be to have him. You can use him and Avonte Maddox. Some of these, it does. This isn't Madden here, folks. People don't have to put players in a certain position here. The guys are lining up all over, inside, outside, different receivers, faster, smaller, taller. So that's what we're doing. We're adding different guys, and he's a playmaker. So I was excited about the pick. Now, the next pick, this one had me jumping through the roof. I'll be real with you. I've been clamoring since last year, since that R word we talked about, to please draft one. Miles Sanders. We all, everybody clamors for him to have 20 carries a game, but he gets about 16 to 18 and hasn't stayed healthy in the 2 years he's played. So you got to have someone behind him. Look, Jordan Howard, I think everybody thinks he's, 48 years old, but he's only like 26. But he's just had some injuries. I think the guy needs to stay healthy, but he's an RB3 for us. And then you got Boston Scott, RB4. This kid adds a different dimension. I really don't care what you call him, RB74. He comes in on third down. He can actually pass protect. We got a guy that can pass protect. And not only that, you don't know if he's running the ball because he's pretty damn good at that, but he can catch the ball. So you got that play action, that RPO, all that fun stuff with a guy like him in the backfield. Whoo, boy, was I excited about Kenneth Gainwell. So I would love to hear your thoughts about adding a running back into this room in the 5th round, too, because I did see some people saying we did not need a running back. What were your thoughts on that pick?
This is probably my second favorite pick that the Eagles made on this because when they took him, I just always could imagine was Eagles actually have two running backs on the field. You have Sanders and you have Gainwell on there. You put one of them in motion. You got to pull a linebacker or a cornerback out of them, and now you still have Gainwell or Sanders still going ahead. And it just opens up so much. You see the box is not going to be many people in the box, or you can still go ahead and run those quick screens out that way, or run them on a text. There's so much you can do with them. But the key thing you mentioned was pass protection. Sanders has improved in that area leaps and bounds for when he initially when he was a rookie. And Jordan Howard was helping teach these young running backs how to do that as well too. But you still saw some instances last year where they had issues trying to determine who to pick up. And when you add a guy like Gainwell who can not only pass protect, identify the right guy, who can also slip out the backfield once he realizes, hey, everything is safe. He can go ahead and flat and go ahead and catch the ball. You can do so much with him. And he can develop that outside zone game as well too. He has some issues sometimes with that, but he can develop it. That's something you can easily teach. And a lot of those times with the stretch things, it's just a matter of getting the right angle on the outside and then taking that one cut and then boom, you're out in front. Gainwell can develop that. And the more and more he gets accustomed to this NFL game, and you add him with Sanders, he's the perfect complement. And I just look at this and just the fact that you could have Gainwell, you can have Sanders, you have Goddard, you have Smith. They may not have the prototypical size, but there's so much speed, and that's what the name of the NFL game is right now. So that was an A+ pick when it came to the Eagles, where they got him in the 5th round.
I love what you said there. You talk about, matchup nightmares. Just imagine being a defensive coordinator, and you talk about that. It's not something out of the water to see split backs. I mean, especially back in the day, I used to love that. But you just saw it with Washington last year, running it with a Memphis running back, Antonio Gibson over there. So, I mean, I think that is a great, great idea, and it's going to happen a lot. We're going to see that defenses aren't going to know what to do, and then they're going to be like, oh yeah, there's Dallas Goedert and Jalen Reagor, Devontae Smith, and whoever you're throwing at him. It's going to be a wild ride. So adding someone like him into the room, all these guys are going to help each other get better. Pass protection, everything they do, they all bring something to the table. And if you notice something about Jordan Howard's career, I love that guy. They knocked on him over there in Chicago, and I think that's when they brought in Cohen, and they're like, he can't catch. Well, he started learning how to catch a ball. Did it damn well, and now he's great at it. And then you talk about him getting better at pass protection. So I think it's just all these picks are getting me excited. You got young guys with a couple veterans teaching each other. So I was really excited about that pick as well, Chris. I can't speak enough about how excited I am to see what this offense looks like. But the defense, clearly there's where the question marks are. Now we went with some defense here. Marlon Tuipulotu. Now, this is a run stopper. This is a guy that we're bringing in. And once again, people are jacked because, they want other positions. And it's, why are you going defensive line again? I think the kid's got a lot of talent. He's somebody that, obviously needs to be coached up with certain things. It's when you're getting into these rounds, guys, that's usually the name of the game in the 6th round. So I like Marlon. I think he has a lot of upside. What were your thoughts on that pick?
So at this risk of not butchering his name over and over, I'm going to use what Mike used in our podcast, No Huddle Show podcast, called Mr. T. So that makes me look, I'm like, I don't want to mess that up big time. But
I
what
like what you
Mr.
said.
T can do, big body, can go ahead and occupy two players in the same time in the middle of that on the middle opposing offensive lines. Now, he's not going to be your pass rushing specialist, but when it comes to a short yardage situation, you have to get into that bear front or eagle front, big body. Take Raekwon Williams. I look a lot. I see the role that Raekwon Williams has. I can see that with Mr. T when it comes there.
Love
He
it.
he's going to have to go ahead and develop. If he develops a pass rush move, hey, all for it. But right now, he's going to be a run stopper. And remember, statistically, the Eagles had issues when it came to the run last year. I mean, everybody thinks the corners and the secondary. Yeah, it was the run game that really prolonged the run defense that prolonged the drives and it kept things going. So he can help out with that. And if he develops that pass rush move, it's going to work out for him.
Definitely. And you talk about, how horrendous it was at times. And, sure, we had some injuries to Cox and Hargrave throughout and Ridgeway and Miguel. Everybody's getting injured. But, second level is you got TJ Edwards. Yeah, he's great against the run. We got Nate Gary out there. People we needed to improve that, stop people from even just plowing through and getting to that second level so easily. So once again, I thought a wonderful pick. You just reminded me for some reason, another thing I heard from your cohort there, Mike K, during the presser the other day, he brought up about Gainwell. Just to go back real quick, I thought it was beautiful because I talked about before the draft Gainwell and Demetric Felton, trying to grab one of these guys and creating that Nyheim Hines role for this offense. And I think that's exactly. And so when I heard him ask that question, he was like, "Oh, that's a great question there." And I was like, "Yeah." So love that. I want to give a shout out to Mike for good call. And the Mr. T, I love it. The Tuapilatu, I think that's maybe how you say it, but I think I'll roll with Mr. T because it's a lot easier, and I don't want to butcher the man's name.
Pity the fool that tries to run up the A gap. I'll go with
And
that.
and dude, he is seriously a beast, and that's something we're lacking. And as much as people want to be upset because I think people have the mindset of Madden, it's you got to plug and play right here. You got to get it in. This guy's got to play, and it's like this. We're gonna have some bumpy roads ahead, guys. We're not coming out here competing for a Super Bowl right away. We have to rebuild this thing the right way, retool it, whatever you want to call it. But we've got a great offensive line if they can stay healthy. Jalen Hurts got himself some weapons. We've got a run game. I think so far, we're doing all right. It's the defense that brings concern. So why be mad that we're trying to bolster said defense? And with the next pick, people, I swear to God, it was insanity. People are losing again. They did it again. Another defensive lineman, but this was one of my sleeper picks for the draft. I really, really like Teron Jackson. I would love to hear what your thoughts are on him. I know he needs a little bit of work, but this kid, they talk, oh, he's uptight and I don't care. I think with the right coaching, this kid's going to come off the edge and slaughter people. And I think he and Sweat in the future, that gets me a little excited. So what were your thoughts, Chris, on the Teron Jackson out of Coastal Carolina pick?
I know a lot of people don't watch a lot of non-autonomous Group of Five college football, but the Sun Belt is developing to one of the best leagues to go ahead and develop NFL talent. And if you have a guy that's able to get 18 and a half sacks over 2 years in that conference, that's something to take note of. And when you look at a guy who just knows how to get to the quarterback, who has that relentless motor that can find ways to get there and develop different moves, that works out perfectly. And I think Jackson will be a major disruptive force, I think, within the next 2 years. And you mentioned the name that he reminds me of, Josh Sweat. When you look at the defensive end position as it stands right now, Brandon Graham's he's still playing well, but he's also getting older. Derek Barnett, you don't know if he's going to be here next year, and he's on his 5th-year contract making $10 million. Unless he takes resigns for something less, you don't know. You have, as we mentioned, we have Sweat. He's really productive, can get to the quarterback, but he's also has concerns about his injury history. Jackson if he comes in and he's able to remain healthy, if he's able to reproduce that production that he had in college, that's a guy I think that, especially that late in the draft, that could be that he could potentially be. I know say Gainwell's the best pick. Jackson could be the best steal of this draft for the Eagles among this draft class.
Thank you, Chris. I sat here, I was pounding down the door. I was like, if we could get him somehow in the sixth round, and I'm telling you, that first sixth round, I'm like, okay, we took him on. I'm like, you better take this kid. And I'm watching him on the board. Got him. I'm so excited. I love the fact that social media is out there, just watching these kids, their excitement. He's so excited. So that got me more excited. I want to apologize to you. We went over the half hour mark. Try to get to these last couple picks real quick. But Jacoby Stevens, this kid, they say he was a safety at LSU, but you heard him in his presser. He's like, honestly, I've been playing this role my whole career. He's like, I'm a hybrid safety linebacker. I think the issue is, not really big enough to be a linebacker, and not exactly the best coverage skills to be safety, more of a box safety. But we talk about that hybrid joker role where he's going to come in here and he's actually going to be what we needed last year when we signed Will Parks. I thought he was amazing steal. So this is another one where I was like, wait, he was still here? Losing my mind. I loved the Jacoby Stevens pick. How did you feel about that, Chris?
You're on the save wavelength because I thought of Will Parks immensely when it came to this. He can go ahead. He's can play well enough to cover those tight ends across the middle. If you have a back leak, he can go cover the curl flat if you need him to. And then also he has the speed enough to go ahead and support if he needs to with some of those safeties, the other deep safeties as well to cover three. So overall good pick and the value. I think when you look at the way this secondary sits right now with the safeties, I think you have Epps. When you look at the reserves, Epps stays. Graylin Arnold, I'm kind of looking over my shoulder right now a little bit now when you see him coming in there, but I think he can compete and contribute, and especially on the special teams end.
Yeah, and he's one of those, another versatile guy, one of those defensive backs where, Vontae Maddox, where you don't feel comfortable outside, but he could be inside at times. He could play a free safety. I think people get way too caught up, and people get caught up in titles too much. And it's like, look, these guys are going to get moved around. The league is changing very much so, dude. And you talked about it earlier, speed. So getting a guy like Stevens where, he's fast for a linebacker and he does have great coverage skills for a linebacker, as a safety, not so much the greatest safety, but so you do add that together and you got the perfect hybrid player. So loved it. Glad we're on the same wavelength there because I'm excited about that pick. And even they've talked about this kid being a steal. I didn't get too much into him. I thought he was decent from what I saw, but I honestly didn't know too much about the Tulane product, defensive end Patrick Johnson. Now, I call him defensive end. Some people felt a certain way about that. Look, I think some people are confused about the fact that a 3-4 outside linebacker and a 4-3 defensive end are essentially, to make it simplify for you, they're the same thing. You know what I mean? And this guy's a tweener. It reminds me so much. And I saw someone was like, well, the comparison was Derek Barnett. I said, that's exactly what it reminds me of. You don't see him on this, defense, but I don't know what this defense is. And I think he's actually kind of perfect for a tweener for certain plays with the speed of the NFL, the way things are heading. I just think certain guys for certain roles where you don't need a bigger, heftier guy. I liked Patrick Johnson pick. What did you feel about that last pick?
It was just like Teron Johnson. You needed to get a guy who specialized in one thing. He knows how to get to the quarterback, teach all the other stuff later on. Put that on a defensive line coach, put that on the defense coordinator Gannon. He knows how to get there. Hey, we want you to go ahead and line up at a 5 technique. We want you to go ahead and line up wide if you decide to use wide 9 once in a while. Hey, we just need you to go here, do what you do best, rush the quarterback, and then whatever we call you, worry about that later on. But he's a very good. That's value right there. You got. I had him a late 4th, 5th round grade on him. So that was very good value to the Eagles. Right? He fell to the Eagles that late in the 7th. That was good.
He was one of the guys I had near like the 6th, but I'll be honest with you, I was so locked in on Teron Jackson. I was like, we're going to get him and nobody else. But we got another one. So I was excited about it. And man, we got hefty. I'll show you. Unfortunately, this is the only graphic I have. So it's going to show you what I graded it. You don't have to grade or anything. But if you notice the graphic, on the left side is the offense, 3 players. And then you talk about 6 of them on defense. But I gave them an A- because I liked the picks overall. That kind of had me in the B range. But what had me give it up to an A was the fact that A-. It's the fact that we got a 1st round pick next year and a 5th round too, trading that 6th and 7th or whatever. So I thought overall it was a good draft. I'll get your thoughts on the draft too, but notice in this graphic, the undrafted free agents we've signed so far. I wanted to get your quick thoughts on maybe some guys that stood out to you, but we loaded up on offense there and one guy on defense, another edge rusher. What were your thoughts on the draft as a whole? And did you think they filled some of the holes with some of these undrafted free agents?
I like the Grimes selection. You had the quarterbacks coach who used to coach at Florida. I think he kind of nudged him and go, "Hey, I think come up here. We're trying to work on something." I think the draft addressed several of those needs. There's still some things they have to get, such as cornerback. I know you got McPherson, but they still have to get a couple, I think 2 or 3 more cornerbacks to help solidify things. But looking at where they picked, what they hauled in overall, and what they have coming in 2022 with all those picks and what's supposed to be a deep draft class is looking like that. I think it overall was good. It was a good time for that front office.
How about it? One last thing, actually, I don't know how I could live with myself if I didn't get your thoughts on this before I let you go. But how about this mullet on Jack Stoll, dude?
I mean, from one person who doesn't have any more hair, I was just kind of a little bit jealous when it comes to that. You see, if he comes back, I feel like we're gonna be waiting for the '80s to start coming back. If he comes out during mini camp with the crop top with the mullet flowing, trying to go ahead and make some play, I'm done. I'm just gonna
Me
start
too.
laughing and can't cover everything.
I
But
had tears in my eyes making the picture. I was like, "Oh, this guy's something else." Love the dedication, but yeah, if he's got some white snake on or something comes out, I'll lose my mind. Now, before we roll out of here, we got one question from Trey. Do you think JJ Arcega-Whiteside it could be flipped over to the tight end position?
we know we saw the Eagles bring in guys who were wide receivers. They try to do that with him. If I'm him, I'm trying everything to keep me on this roster because if a
Special
coach is,
team.
yeah, even then I'm like,
Yeah, dude.
but if it helps, I don't foresee. I think they're going to give every opportunity for him to remain at wide receiver just to prove that he can be the possession guy. Because you do have Fulgham. There's not that many bigger receivers that are currently on the roster, so I think they'll go ahead and give him a chance to remain there at that position. But if it's late in camp and they say, "Hey, you just switch over to tight end," you might want to listen to coaches because that might be a signal saying you may be on the way out. So I don't foresee it, but at this point, it wouldn't hurt to try to keep him on the roster.
I'm in the same boat as you. Don't see it myself. I just don't think he has the grit. He's okay at blocking. That's just not it for me. I think he's gonna have to compete. You talk about Trevon Grimes coming in here. He's already got some guys that like him, and Brian Johnson is, so that was his offensive coordinator. Now the QB coach here. I think we know that Fulgham is going to push him, so he's got competition here. He's the possession guy. I think if anything, obviously he's going to compete for that Michael Pittman role in the Colts offense, but it's like that's the possession guy. That's what you were drafted for, and maybe they can get something out of him. But if not, I think it's bye-bye, dude, because we need to get real tight ends in here. But yeah, that was it, Chris. I really, really had a great time getting to know you, getting to talk some shop with you. And dude, I hope I can get you on here again because this was truly a pleasure.
Jimmy, man, it was fun talking football with you, man. And I'll be happy to come back anytime you want. Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course. And, thank you so much to everyone out there that tuned in. If you're watching this later, if you're listening on iTunes, Apple Music, wherever you're checking this out, thank you so much for watching, listening, for subscribing, retweeting, whatever you're doing out there. Truly appreciate your support. If you guys need anything, please reach out to me. Chris, do you have any final words before we head on out, man?
Just get ready for an exciting season. It's going to be, even if it's not playoff worthy, or if it is comes late, it's not what everybody came accustomed to. It sure won't be boring. Put it
How,
that
thank you. That's literally what I've been saying. The
way.
excitement. That's what I'm ready for. The pure excitement. Dude, it was exciting talking to you. Thank you so much again. And I will talk to you all later. As always, go Birds!